Hola. Welcome to Word to Your Mama, the podcast that amplifies diverse voices and celebrates shared experiences. Hosted by me, Ritzy P., a Latina creative entrepreneur with a background in art, music, and new web technologies. From Academy and Emmy winners to activists, artists, and builders, we celebrate the rich diversity of my multicultural tribe. There will be special guests, mad laughs, and absolutely no BS. Word to Your Mama drops every Monday on your favorite podcast platform. This is the third year that we're having a convo on the future of BIPOC, disabled, and LGBTQ plus artists with Colony Little, who is an accomplished arts writer, and Evonne Gallardo, who works in arts and culture management and is currently the senior program director at Community Partners. So we did this, I believe, in 2020. And then I was like, let's keep this discussion going because it's ever evolving. So we had that, I believe, last year, 2 years ago. And then we just had this conversation back in May of 2024. So we discussed what is the future for BIPOC, disabled, LGBTQ plus artists currently. Have we made any progress? What's happening? Break it down. And then we talk about if they think the recent cultural and societal shifts have impacted the visibility and acceptance of marginalized artists. We talk about how lawmakers are basically banning the use of DEI and the word and programming and how that impacts this entire ecosystem. What role do they see technology in shaping the future of representation for marginalized creators, artists, and also any advice that they have for these communities of artists navigating this industry now in this present day. And of course, we get into a little bit, music and all that stuff, but we're really focusing on how things have changed. Are they better? Are they worse? And what we see in the future. Great conversation as always with these ladies. They're always on the pulse of what's going on because they work in this field. They see what's happening. They speak to the artists. They speak to the institutions, the galleries, all that stuff. So, yeah, I give you the ladies. So good to see you guys. Look at us. Look at us. Okay, so I'm excited to be this is our third year, ladies. Our third year of doing an update on the future of BIPOC, disabled, and LGBTQ plus artists with you lovely ladies.
I can't believe 3, it's the magic number.
Right. And that is very appropriate because last year we spoke on what you guys felt was the current climate of this topic, and then we also talked about Tío Pedro, and we also talked about De La Soul.
Yes.
So perfect. 3 is the magic number.
And then the first and the first time that we met was during the pandemic, right? That was the first time that we talked.
It was.
Right. And I think it was 2020 that we talked that fall when we thought it was going to be over in a couple of months, and we were in the thick of it for mad years.
I like all of these cultural touch points because, with De La, that was certainly a moment. And now we're in a very different cultural moment. So I'm hoping that we can talk about some of the good, bad, ugly.
Yeah. No, I want to talk about it
funny,
all, ladies.
All of that. Yeah.
I want to talk about it all. But first, let's start off. How are you doing? Whoever wants to go first, let us know how the past year since we last met, how you've been doing, what's new, what are you excited about?
Oh my goodness. Wow, thanks, Colony. Colony's pointing at me. I'm like, okay. So I have, I guess, first of all, thank you for being my sister weavers because as you just ran down that little history, Ritzy, I'm like, wow, like we've been weaving together.
Right.
And whether it's, the state of affairs or culture or, our, you know, spiritual, physical, mental health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I love these touch points because they really do feel like we're weaving time here. Um, speaking of this thing we call, BIPOC, DEI, just being in community together. That's what I like to think about it as, rather than whatever we are calling it in the workplace. I've been in the application of it. I think I talked about that the last time. I've been continuing to be in the application of it through the philanthropy work that I'm doing as a funder. And I am a senior program director at Community Partners, and I've been working through a state-funded program called Creative Core. And we've been working with 33 artists and culture bearers. And this is the practice of all of that theoretical stuff that we hear about, read about, aspire to. This is the practice of it. This is the being in community, being in the collective care that we often hear about. This is the being called in with love, being held accountable and holding others accountable with love. And it's just been a real point of joy for me. And I've learned a lot. I hope that we've done a little bit of the undoing of harm that philanthropy has done historically to communities and artists and culture bearers. And I know that we have, because we've actually been documenting the artists and these grantees' experiences, and so we've actually gotten to hear from them about their experiences. So that's one thing I've been up to. I have really been in a process of taking things off my plate professionally because I have been focused on home, health, and relationship, being in relationship. I am at an age now where I need to go deep, not wide. And that takes a lot of energy. And I don't have as much energy as I used to when I was younger. And what I mean by being in relationship is connected to my focus on home. It is being on the journey of aging and caretaking with my parents. And let me tell you something, and this will be my last point, and I'm going to hand it to Colony. I did everything I thought I could to not end up at this point as the only girl in a Latino family. Yeah. I did everything I thought I needed to do to not be here because I did not want to be that person. And yet life was like, that's cute. Right? This is where you need to be. Life was like, this isn't about cultural. This isn't about the patriarchy. This isn't about cultural norms. This isn't about gender. This is about you. And this is about them. And this is where you're supposed to be. So it's been a process of surrendering to that, despite whatever my ideas were. And so there's been also a lot of grieving of what I thought my life was going to be.
Right.
And surrendering to what it is, and then the gratitude of being on the journey with them in these last years. So there's a lot there. So yeah, a lot of pruning, a lot of, hard lessons, a lot of grief, a lot of surrender, and a lot of like, I don't know kind of stuff.
Right.
A lot of, I guess in certain terms, like dying, right? There's a death there's a death that has happened or is happening. So yeah, that's all that's happening. And I'm just really grateful for the editing that has happened, because then it has allowed me to really focus on this one, the work that I am doing, right? To not get so spread thin, that I can focus on the work that I'm doing while having to invest my energy in these other parts of my life. And I'm just really grateful to be able to do that. So that's me. Colony, you're up next.
Wait, 1 second, Colony. I just want to touch on Evonne,
I know,
your intro and stuff.
Passing it over.
But there's
a bunch
a bunch of gems dropped. I was like making markers on here, because first off, the weaving. I love framing it that way. We're weavers, time weavers. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning of how you're doing, right? Everything that you mentioned after that, instead of going wide, go deep. This is a conversations, right? It's the topic is a certain thing, but we are all right here collectively in a certain age bracket, and these fucking conversations aren't happening. This is what I love. This is the conversations that we have privately on our thread on a regular basis are real. Are fucking real. And this is the behind the scenes of amazing folks such as yourselves that are out there doing the work in practice, that are out there telling the folks what needs to be done. But also, this is the behind the scenes of, okay, Evonne is out there doing the work, but for her to do her work properly with love, she has to fucking be okay over here in her private life. And as people of color, right, what you mentioned is very important. You did everything you thought you wanted to do so that you wouldn't end up being where you're at right now. But life, like you said, was like, oh, cute. But we're here, right? And taking it back to the weaving part, you said weaving. I don't weave, but I've seen it back in the days, right? Or knitting. But I remember when I was trying to learn, if I fuck up, I could bloop, redo,
undo,
undo, redo. And I think that's important. I think that's the whole, you're just like, let me focus on me. Let me go deep. Like I'm going to keep that. I'm going to start using that. Like because I'm here today, ladies. This episode won't drop until June. But today, May 16th is the last day of my 40s. The last day of my 40s today until 7:55 in the morning tomorrow. So these are important conversations.
Goodness.
It's crazy. But these are important conversations that, you're going deep. That's what I feel. I didn't have a word for it. So thank you so much, Evonne, for that. Like, I'm going deep. This is what we need to do. Like, there's some women that I've been in these spaces with that are in their 30s, but because of the sharing of knowledge and access to information and these safe spaces, they're able to go deeper earlier. But we're a Gen X here. We're one of the dopest generations.
Yes.
We didn't have this. Internet was not till later in life.
That's right.
So these conversations are very important. So I want to say muchísimas gracias for sharing, being honest as hell, sharing what you're doing, and every transition. The only constant is change. And every transition to do it correctly, like my husband has told me before, and we talk about a lot of times, to build, you have to destroy some things.
Yes.
So there is that death. There is that the transition. You gotta mourn of what you thought it was or what it was, and then what it is now, right? So thank you so much, Evonne, for sharing that, because this is a behind the scenes for our culture bearers, for those that are out there doing the work. They also have to take care of themselves. You need to take care of yourself. So the going deep, the realization, the sharing, the awareness of it all. That's what I've been having these conversations with everybody that are in their 20s to us, to people that are older. It's the awareness so that the recovery time is quicker.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, that's happening to my brain. My brain's telling me I suck. My brain's telling me this is over. Why am I here? Well, you know what? The recovery time is like, oh, we are here. What do we need to do to keep moving? So thank you so much, Evonne, for sharing all of that. That's so important. Colony,
100%.
you're up.
Yeah. Evonne, I mean, thank you so much for sharing that, because I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that is an important lesson for us. That probably should be what guides our conversation today. I mean, I think back on what we talked about this time last year, and we spent a lot of time talking about equity and inclusion and post-pandemic, what does the art world look like? And at that moment, I think we were facing these attacks on the notion of, or the idea of, DEI. And now we're in this mode where we've essentially obliterated and destroyed any semblance of DEI, as these institutions and positions have been erased and eradicated. So we're on the other side of it. I think we were kind of seeing that happen the last time that we talked. Now that we're on the other side of it, I feel like collectively there are a lot of us that are in this mode of retreat. And that's not surrender, right?
That's right.
What do I need to do to reposition myself, to strengthen myself, and to move forward? So I love, Evonne, how you put, where you are right now. Because I recognize in this moment, for me to say, hey, I'm good, it's like, that's only telling one part of the story. But I think that there is so much going on in the world right now that we have to strengthen ourselves by retreating and figuring out what is it going to take for us to show up in this season, for everyone that's around us. So I love that you're taking that time to prioritize. I certainly can relate to that and appreciate that. I'm doing some of the same things in terms of reassessing kind of, where my strengths are, and with my writing in particular, and where I want my writing to go. So I love the weaving analogy, because I was thinking like, I'm just kind of sticking to my knitting here with my writing.
Yes.
And right now I'm staying very hyper local and focusing on artists that are in my community here in Raleigh. And I've just been appreciating the work that they're creating in this moment, and finding a way to introduce their work more broadly, outside of the Triangle. I have been, I was part of this experience back in March, where I was invited to go to Edenton, North Carolina. And Edenton is on the eastern side of the state. And two women Michelle Lanier and Jonica Rivers brought together 60 Black women to honor the legacy of Harriet Jacobs. And Harriet Jacobs is a woman from Edenton, North Carolina, wrote a book on her experience being enslaved and being in captivity for over 7 years. She held herself in captivity in her grandmother's home to escape sexual abuse from her slave owner. Her story is an incredible story. And Jonica and Michelle have created a memorial site for her in her hometown. And they invited a group of women to just engage in the space that she was in. And I have to tell you that experience was profound for me. And it opened my eyes to how we can experience history beyond reading about it. How do we create an experience where we're sharing a moment together, and how do we take what we've learned in that moment and share it more broadly? So it was just such a profound, unexpected discovery for me that really radically changed how I view my writing and how I view digging into archives. And so I'm in this moment of, speaking of, kind of family and recognizing, where I am in this moment with my family and my parents as they're aging. How can I dig more closely into their background and their history so that their stories can remain alive in some form? So been doing a lot of like deep dives into the archive, and it's been really illuminating. So I'm in this mode where I've kind of retreated a little bit, but with some focus, which is, if that makes sense, retreat with focus. But it's been a good 2024 so far. So I'm looking forward to the second half of the year.
Right. We're halfway
bracing myself for it too. Yeah.
Right. Because this is an election year, and we're still dealing with a lot of, crazy. I mean, it seems kind of bizarre world. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I'm like, how are we here? Like, what is happening? But I really like the refocus, and I feel like I did that at the end of last year, and I want to do it on a consistent basis. It's kind of reevaluate, recalibrate, refocus, because everything's so many different parts, moving parts all the time. So going back to DEI, I was made aware of what was happening in Texas with DEI because of a client that I recently had. And we had her, her clients are, it's academic clients, like big universities, big institutions, academic institutions. And because she's in Texas, and because they believe, I'm quoting this, they believe DEI programs and training have indoctrinated students with left-wing ideology and forced universities to make hires based on their support of diversity efforts rather than on merit and achievement. She has to recalibrate her business to take away that wording, but she's still doing, her and her company are still doing the work. So my question to you ladies is, how do you think that the recent cultural and societal shifts have impacted the visibility and acceptance of marginalized artists being in the work that you guys do in different realms but I feel like you guys see a lot of similarities. What do you think has changed because of what's happening in the world, what's laws and stuff like that, policies? Whoever wants to go first.
I think it's just a matter, I don't want to oversimplify this at all, but I think that the the popular conversation has just been around demonizing terms and words. And, for me, it's kind of like, folks have latched on to demonizing DEI as a concept, or saying go woke, go broke, or whatever, and trying to attach every damn failure economically, socially in the world, attaching it to that. So in my mind, it's like, okay, as a strategy, what does it mean to go back underground with it? Instead of having a scholarship that is that you're gearing toward Black applicants, make sure that the folks who are making the decisions on these scholarships, or what I'm just thinking of scholarships, for example,
right.
Make sure that the decision makers are diverse. Make sure that the donors are diverse. Make sure that the people that you're awarding these scholarships to are doing work that is exactly what DEI is supposed to do. Right? You're making sure that you have an inclusive pool, that they're engaged in their communities, they're engaged culturally, they're uplifting and amplifying voices. There are things that I think that you can do instead of complaining about, and I'm thinking about Duke, for example, because I think Duke recently had an issue with pulling back some scholarships in that vein. But I think there's just a way of just retrenching that is needed right now. Instead of taking this fatalistic approach that, okay, well, we can't, move forward in this direction. I think it's just a matter of redirecting. I keep thinking about, not to use a textile or quilting or like knitting analogy, but I think about like symbols and codes that were embedded in quilts. Like I was reading, I actually wrote something about textiles and quilting, and how quilts were used along the Underground Railroad to signify enslaved individuals as they were escaping to freedom. I'm just like, are we at a point where we just got to take it underground,
right,
and find ways to build community with ourselves without the gaze of the majority? I think that that's what's needed. I hope I don't know if I'm rambling here, but
no,
I think that's exactly the point that we're at now. And similarly, I just learned, because I was trying to find a piece of cloth for a workshop we're doing and from Veracruz, and learned that similarly there's hand-woven, historically hand-woven cloth from Veracruz that also would hide messages in these beautiful this beautiful material that traveled right from various places, whether it was strategy or cultural messages or education. So I think that's exactly where we're at, and because we have the arc of time as a benefit, we know that movements have one step forward, two steps back, and it's not a success failure kind of binary. It's a visibly kind of movement forward, and then a retreat to do the work, to continue the work, but it's just less visible, but it's still important work. And one of the things that I'm really proud of with regard to this program that I've been working on is the way that we designed it. A lot of people don't know at a national level that California still has a law that prevents any type of affirmative action from happening, right? We cannot at a public level, design any program that benefits someone according to race with, public dollars, public opportunities. But there's been incredible data frameworks that you see, whether it's life outcomes or, various conditions of life expectancy rates, health, class, that shows, right, if you put race and ethnicity, an overlay there, it still gives you the same results. And so there's ways that however you slice and dice it, it still gives you, unfortunately, those same results. So the program I feel really proud of, because the artists and culture bearers, the way we designed it, from the guidelines to the panel composition, selected artists that had been doing movement building, community growing, working at the intersections of social change outside of systems, on the fringes for decades, but had never applied for grants, had never received this level of investment in their work. And I'm just so proud of that, because as one of them said, it's like you're working, and then you get this investment and it's like a trampoline. Then you're just kind of like, then you're working at a whole other level.
Right.
And I think this is an example of artists and culture bearers that those of us working in systems need to look to in these moments as models of what are we supposed to do right now? Like, how do we keep this work going when a light isn't shined on, what we're trying to advance, what we're trying to do. And so I'm really proud of this program for that fact, that we are seeing the investment in that work, and the valuing of those folks. So I do agree with Connie that it is a matter of, it doesn't matter what I do find disheartening, and I want to really, knock somebody out, is just the unsurprising but really frustrating firing, the not setting up for success of Black women leaders. Right. That is incredibly angering, frustrating, fakery, demonic. Just like, I just don't know. I don't even have the words for it. I just don't even have the words for that. And you can use whatever excuse, whatever scenario that you want. I just, the level of performance, at that level, in those sizes of institutions, just is, it brings out my East Los girl. Like, I just want to slash some tires, like, just really frustrating. The rest of it, as I was consulting and holding space at that time, I'm a vibes person. I could feel the performance happening. Right. I knew that a lot of folks hadn't done their homework. I knew that this was a moment, and I could feel that this wasn't about the work. It was about being heard and being validated. And, I was like, okay. But those kind of moves, the whole, I don't know what to say about that, but it's really, that's what gets under my skin, is seeing that continuing to happen.
And we see it in every sector. I mean, I know that we're talking about the arts, but Evonne, you're speaking to something very specific to academia. And I think about the beginning of the year, with, we've had like 3, prominent Black women who have either lost their lives or lost their jobs. And, we have to start thinking about, what are we calling women of color, Black women, what are we calling them to do when we're putting them in these positions and in these roles? And I remember we spent time talking about this last time as well. How are we setting people up for success when they are in these roles where they are the only one? Or they're in just very, very small circles. I think that we have to find ways to certainly support them, but also support systems that are outside of those frameworks as well. I mean, I don't have an answer for folks who are in that space and in those positions, other than we need to collectively find ways to support them. But it's a really horrifying trend. And I before when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, I came across an essay that a writer named Jessica Lynn wrote. I'm a huge fan of her work as an arts writer and arts critic, and she penned a letter to a fellow writer, and I think this was back in 2017, and she talked about all of these things. Like, and reading it, I'll see if I can find the book. I have the book in front of me. It's called Track Changes. Track Changes, a handbook for art criticism. So I highly recommend this. But the letter was so timely, and it was written in 2017. So it's like wow. You said, we're going through these phases. And I think about Black women in academia, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Barbara Christian, folks, when I was in college that I looked up to, who have lost their lives at really important times, not only in their career, but they were young. Yeah. And so what is that performative expectation doing to us as Black women? It's hugely concerning to me. So again, I feel like all the more reason for us to really engage in a conversation about how we care for ourselves and how we care for each other. And maybe, maybe the answer is in some of this work that's taking place outside of the institution. I will say that the Harriet Jacobs experience that I had, they foregrounded care. And it was amazing to see how some people reacted to that. Because, they were very methodical about how they approached every element of the experience. We had a dinner, but we didn't know who was going to be at the dinner until we showed up, and it was like 60 women from all over the country, and it was a great way of like reconnecting and connecting to folks. But there are some people there who really tight schedules. They have to have everything planned out, and so some of that unknown was really difficult for them. And it was like that was by design. It was like we are taking you out of what what your day-to-day routine is and what and we're inviting you to be in this moment with us. And that was just, I think that the more that we do things like that, I think that it on some spiritual psychological level helps prepare our peers for the work that needs to be done.
Yes, 1,000%. Last time, I believe I mentioned Fashawn Cox, who was the co-author, the inclusion writer. And so I'll put a link in the show notes. I just had an episode with her last month. She is the producer and host of Sister Brunch podcast. And
Yes.
and so this, I think this goes with this conversation on how do we support, you know, everyone of color, but especially Black women that are being put in these positions that don't have no support. So in the episode, she talks about the origin of Sister Brunch. And Sister Brunch is Black women in the entertainment industry, right?
Mm.
And so it was, you know, the few they're in a few positions of power, having a brunch with the ones that are coming up that are in, and they're just like, how do I navigate this? They said this, but this, and they're like, well, it was an in-person brunch where they would get
Wow.
together out on their own, you know, maybe add in a few drinks or whatever, but have these real conversations. And then it evolved into a podcast. So then, you know, more people had access because it was, you know, available online. And now, since the recording of that, Fashawn is now the DEIA initiative manager for the California Film Commission. So, and she's the one that I mentioned last year, where as the co-author of the inclusion rider that, you know, people were just using to say, oh, I used it, but they also do check-ins of how to set up a system and how to do the check-in,
Right.
have the support. But I think we're at this point now where last year I just completed 2 6-month cohorts of being in community online and then having a retreat, kind of similar to what you experienced, Colony, where I'm with other Latinas who are, you know, we have this cultural understanding, whether you speak Spanish or you don't. It's
Right.
this thing of what's ingrained in us, right? We're all trying to decolonize all the different ways and the different thinkings, but we're trying to make new moves. But to be in community, to be in a place where I'm allowing myself to be in community is one thing, but then to be in community and to really just feel supported. And then we go on the retreat, and a lot of us were like, what are we doing on the street? We're thinking, take out the pencil, the pad, we're going to do work. But it was like inner work. And I was like, oh, that's important, right? So I think I think maybe this what's been happening for me and what I've seen in different realms still as creators, as cultural bearers, is being in now that, you know, we're on the other side of the pandemic and we can meet in person sometimes, but having these support systems, I think, might be a great start to be able to navigate this, right? Like, so just being in community with you two online has been great. We had an amazing session that Evonne provided for us where she read our charts. and,
Yes,
and
I loved
that was that was like filling my cup of what I needed. And so that type of thing, I feel like it's under the radar, it's underground. Like you said, it's not in the gaze of, they don't know what's happened. First of all, they could give a fuck about what we're doing. So to do these things outside and do on our own, they're not watching for us, but they don't understand that that's so powerful when we get together, right?
Yeah.
When we take care of each other, we support each other. And then also what I've seen for my personal experience is the reminders of how amazing we are, the exchange of ideas, the exchange of the access given to opportunities, to funding. I've really become really close to TK. TK, who is the founder of Las Ofrendas in Austin, Texas, of all places. And she's really doing the work of intersectionality. Like we are Latin, you know how it is in the Latino communities. Maybe if anyone mentions it, they're just talking about it just to talk about it. But she's doing it in practice, right? And she's at a place where you mentioned, Evonne, where she's been doing this work for over 10 years in Texas, of all places, in the capital of Texas, where now people just trust her and know that she's going to bring the people together. It's all artists, artisans, artists, creators, culture bearers. And now she's gaining access to how to fund this. It's over for them. It's over for folks that are trying to hold them down, right? Because like you said, you're these people that are in your program have been doing this work forever. They know that part of it, right?
Yeah.
They got that shit down. You know, they're trusted. They know how to access people. They know how to bring people together. But then you give them that extra knowledge and access to funding, so they can, like, you. What did you call it? You're jumping on the trampoline. Like, you're just, things are happening. So I feel like that I've seen this in practice over the past year. You guys are talking about it. I feel like that's very important. So my next question is, how do we feel that technology, like, what role does technology play in the future of representation for the folks that we're talking about in all the different realms? Any thoughts on that?
Wow. So I've been having a mixed experience with let's talk just about younger generations. One of our artists, Victor Payan, who works in Orange County in Santa Ana, whose focus is civic engagement, voter registration, because as you know, Santa Ana is a heavily Latinx community, and actually is the center point that flipped Orange County blue. And so voter registration, whichever way you vote, is really important to getting the vote out, and is working both at a traditional grassroots level, intersection of arts practices and community building and growing, but also working with a grassroots gamer group that's building a game that can be shareable, that moves you through, I guess, civic engagement experiences. And it's meant to be shared, both of all ages, but it will be launched in November leading up to Election Day. And so there's artists kind of utilizing that specifically for this kind of social engagement, civic engagement practices. And then there's younger artists or younger folks who are like, I'm not on social media at all.
Right.
And I'm like, what? And it's just very surprising to me, frankly. But I also can see that kind of boomerang, maybe, like, or, in a sort of general modernity kind of thing, or rejection of whatever came before them. But I think, like anything, there's possibilities, and there's a lot of risk right now for creatives, I think. We can talk about AI, but I think we just don't know a lot. We don't know a lot, from my perspective, we have a sense of where our data, like how our data is being used, but we don't know fully. Like, I haven't sat down and heard, like, here's how your data is going to be used and how it might be used, and how that's good and how that's not good. I haven't looked into it personally. Maybe some folks are looking into it. And then, how can this be used for good? How can we use it to change things? That's why I'm actually, Ritzy, going to be focusing on you during one of my sessions at the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures Leadership Institute, because I need to force myself to dive into your work as a way of understanding the Metaverso's work and your role in that so that I can speak to it and also dip my toe in the water about how this is good, right? Good for diversifying the space and the possibilities within it. So that's kind of how I'm weighing things, or those are kind of like what I'm sprinkling in the brain at the moment with technology.
Yeah, I think that we have spent a lot of time living in fear when it comes to this iteration of technology and this, AI as the boogeyman that's going to, take all of our jobs and render us all obsolete, right? So I think that, I at the risk of showing my age, right? My comfort level with technology is not where it was 5-10 years ago. Where 10 years ago, I was fully on board and embracing everything. I worked in that space in a prior life. But now when I am looking at how AI is being used to augment work and kind of make things easier, that's one thing. But then I think there's this over reliance that that I am particularly concerned about, and I also have concerns about inherent bias embedded in some of this technology that really should be used to kind of render bias as an obsolete phenomenon. So,
right.
So I think about, just like little simple things like facial recognition and skin tone and things like that have negatively impacted some communities over others. So I think that also, I feel like we've put the cart before the horse and we haven't really, put the protections in place to go about this in a smart way, if that makes sense. I think that we're kind of like, we're asking all of the right questions, but it might be a little bit too late, because I think that the potential for technology to be abused is already kind of out there. And to your point, Evonne, I think that it's interesting to hear about this rejection of social media right now. And I never really thought about where that's coming from, but I can certainly see how that's a generational reaction. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that pushback.
Yeah.
Right.
And how the industry responds to that.
Right.
To your just wanting to respond to Colony's point about, the bad actors. I think what we can see across industries, not just technology, is that who is leading decisions, who is leading is big industry.
This is your friendly reminder to take a deep breath. Este es tu recordatorio para que respires profundo. Take a deep breath in. Inhala profundo. Exhale as you observe your breath, letting all the air out. Exhala, observando tu exhalación, dejando salir todo el aire. Would you like to help me reach my mission of teaching meditation to 1 million children? ¿Te gustaría ayudarme a alcanzar mi misión de enseñar meditación a 1 millón de niños? I invite you to join me in the Decide Balance Oasis, a safe space where families can find bilingual meditations and mindfulness practices and so much more. Te invito a que te unas conmigo en el Decide Balance Oasis, un espacio seguro donde las familias pueden encontrar meditaciones bilingües y prácticas de atención plena y mucho más. Go to decidebalance.com for more details. I'll see you in the Oasis. Visita decidebalance.com para obtener más información. Nos vemos en el Oasis.
Gracias for listening to Word to Your Mama. I have a unique cross-section of guests on here because I'm a consultant who thrives at the intersection of creative innovation, tech, and community impact. There are a variety of ways we could work together. So check out ritzyperiwinkle.com to learn more. Link in the bio.
Not government. It's big industry. Not the little guy. It's big industry. And I don't think that should stop the little guy from exploring, experimenting, and innovating. That is absolutely how we interrupt big industry if we don't sell out. But I absolutely think that is what we don't know enough about. Like, what is big tech doing? Like, why is TikTok being forced to sell? Truly, like, why is TikTok being forced to sell? Is it Meta, or is it our safety, or is it because we're hearing propaganda? Like, what is it truly? I think we just don't, even the savviest of us, I think, still have a lot of questions. And things are moving so fast. So I think a lot of folks are tapping out. Maybe that's why the younger generation is tapping out. They're like, who knows what their reasoning is. I haven't gotten a good answer.
I think a couple of things to touch upon is that what I've seen in the past 2 years of working in the space and working with a lot of different builders, VCs in the space, and seeing my goal, my mission is, how does this impact our community and other marginalized communities? And a lot of stuff. I tell people, be afraid of it. Yeah, I'm afraid of it too. And I'm like deep in it. But there's also good happening, right? Like, but also the facts are the facts. It's already left the station. And we have to be in there. A lot of the things that I talk about, whether, in September, I was just at the UN and I presented the importance of diversity and inclusion in this new iteration, because we have an opportunity, and I said something to the effect of, what I led with, what is the definition of insanity? Is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. When the internet and a lot of this new tech that we use day to day, we don't even know. A lot of us that are different age groups are using all this. You've been using AI. You've been using it, right? But you don't know it because it's so seamless. You think you're talking to somebody. You weren't. When someone's asking, how can I help you? That wasn't a real person. Like, the stuff, Siri, like all that stuff. We've been using it, but it's been so, the marketing, the implementation of it has just been so seamless. And because people are trying to understand how we work. But when it was first created, especially the internet, this is where we lead to now. We weren't thought of. We weren't even, it wasn't even, we weren't even considered. And we also weren't the people that were building it. So this is a very important situation where with this new iteration, and I'm just calling it now emerging tech because it includes the blockchain, AI, gaming, spatial, AR, VR, XR, all those different things. We have an opportunity now to be the builders, to be the creators, to be those in power making the decisions, to be the ones for recognition of skin, of hair, of cultural differences. Like the people that I'm talking to, they're doing stuff on NDA where they're in Asia, where they're building their own specific AI that takes all the different languages and intricacies of the languages into consideration, cultural, all the different cultural little things that go into where you just can't pick that. That's not something that you can just say, oh, Southeast Asia, how do they do stuff? It's some people have to build it to include what are the differences and the little, the things that you have to look at, because knowing, especially just as Latinos, we're not a monolith, so you can't just be Spanish, that's it, because our tour guide in Colombia was telling us how he drives all these people, and he said something to him was just like to pick up something, and he had someone from like the Dominican Republic that was about to beat his ass. Do you know what I'm saying? Like those types of things. And regarding AI, there's a $20 million fund, and I'll have a link in the show notes, that I learned about, that was given to the University of Washington and a couple of other institutions that have got engineers, scientists, and DEI folks together. And I've been reaching out to them, and no one's reached back, because I was like, you got this 20 million. It's been over a year. You say you're doing this stuff. I was like, I want in. How can I help and support? But also, what are you doing? Where is this 20 million going? And it's basically to, I forget the whole name. I don't have it with me right now, but it's basically kind of like the overseers, I guess, of the good and the bad and the ugly of AI for society, right? So I'm trying to figure out what that is.
University of Washington. Does Microsoft have anything to do with it?
Right. And I'm going to look into it, and I'll send it to you guys, and I'll put it in the show notes. But, there's a lot. What I've seen is it's the fringes. It's the people that no one knows about, that I've been in contact with, that are, my mentee, the work that she's doing as, a young Black woman working with Black scientists at the University of Washington, creating technology and coming from the view and the angle of Chicana and Black women activists, and talking about what I think you mentioned earlier, Evonne, or maybe you did too, Colony. No, you did, Colony, about the rest part, right? I was privy to some papers that weren't privy to everyone else, and I was reading their reports, and they were talking about their process of coming up with writing this scientific paper on their findings. And they were quoting bell hooks and all these different, amazing women, Black and brown women. And they were saying, we were getting together at this rate on this, every such and such time. But then we realized that we couldn't just jump into a meeting and talk about this stuff. We had to check in with ourselves and say, well, this doesn't work for us as time and frequency. Thinking of that, taking that into consideration when doing research, when you're talking about us. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I'm in the weeds. I'm seeing what's happening. And, I was just in April, I was speaking on using the technology, catalyzing for social good. And what I've been seeing, what's been happening for Black, brown, Indigenous, and beyond, other marginalized communities in the space, especially creators. For artists, my one friend, she's Afro-Latina. She has vitiligo. She comes from the fashion industry. She couldn't get anything done. She lived in New York. Nothing was happening there. And now she has all these opportunities because of what blockchain has created. I've seen a movement of young kids that are younger, probably the same age as my son. So I don't know what that is. It's depending on what schedule you look at. It could be alpha, it could not be alpha, who's to say? But they're using flip phones. They don't even want to use smartphones, let alone social media. Because they're seeing, I think there's so much access, and I guess depending on what access you're given, they're seeing the negative effects of a smartphone, let alone social media. But what I think is very interesting is that with the blockchain, it's decentralized. So the big thing with all this stuff, all the social media platforms, any newsletter, you have access to data. Data is the moneymaker. Data is what people want, right?
Right.
how you use things. They're watching what you do, all the cookies you say yes because you don't want to read what's on the page. They're getting
Right.
all your information. They're seeing how you move, how you think, what you buy, who you interact with. But decentralization, if you do, there's social media platforms that I am a part of that I haven't dug deep into yet, that I own my data, right? I met a woman last year when I went to New York for the UN presentation. She's from the Caribbean. She's a doctor. She is talking about, we had a whole amazing conversation while there's music playing about our own data when it comes to genetics as Black, brown, indigenous folks, and how we, let me just see where I come from. Oh, sorry, sold your stuff. Who has access to that? Let alone what happened to Henrietta Lacks and her cells and her stuff.
Right.
So she just texted me the other day. She's launching this thing. It's called Carry Genetics, where it's genetics, but you own it's decentralized, so it's on the blockchain. So you own. So a Henrietta Lacks situation is not possible because if they want access to your information, your genes, your cells, they got to go through you because it's on the blockchain that says I own my information, my medical data, my genetic data. And because she's starting from a pool of the Caribbean, you have more accurate data on your genetics. Right? So like there's all this decentralization. I feel like maybe those kids that are like, fuck social media because I don't want them to have my data, or because I'm spending so much time, it's making me depressed because, as you've seen with studies, with video games, with social media, they hire psychologists specifically to understand how human behavior works so they can get you addicted to it. Right? So it's like maybe those generations and those of us that are older that are concerned about this, maybe it's the move to decentralize social media in a different way, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's all this potential, all this stuff. It's exciting. And that's why I am starting a new podcast that's just amplifying diverse voices in emerging tech, so we can hear Black, brown, indigenous, other marginalized folks. So there's so many podcasts out there that are for the folks that are in it. And sometimes I listen to it and I don't understand what's happening. So this is something for folks like yourself, folks like people in my family. They're like, I don't know what that is, but let me connect through people that I look like, sound like, that I understand or can relate to their stories. And I see that they're regular folks like me that are in these spaces that are creating and building, and hearing their why. Why is it important, right?
Right.
Because regardless if you and of all three of us say we're tapping out, let the next generation, the next generation has to deal with it. So what can we do now? How can we be involved? You don't have to be a developer, an engineer to be in these spaces. You can use the information, the experience that both of you have to go into these new spaces. And it's just another tool, but now it's decentralized. We own our shit, right? It's like, so all those different things. We could talk about.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I think that you're connecting the dots in a really important way, because I hadn't thought about that this precipitous drop off in social media use that has taken place. And it's like, where is everybody going? And where's, not to sound like I am trying to take advantage of that situation, but it's like, what, how do we leverage that energy in a different way? And so I think that that's a really fascinating approach. And I love that you're doing another podcast to bring our attention to the work that's being done out there. I think that's incredible. Because I mean, I think that, you know, one thing that we've seen with you, Ritzy, is that your network is so vast now, and you're coming across some people who are just doing some fascinating work. And I love that you're continuing to amplify them through your platform. But having this specific lane dedicated to emerging tech is really important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I just want to create some connective tissue here, because we had a staff retreat recently, and we went on walks. We were at Descanso Gardens here in the Los Angeles area. Beautiful. And I got to walk with a fellow staff member that I rarely interact with. And I learned that they spend a lot of time enjoying the metaverse, and that they program that they were going into, I guess, you know, those large stadium type of environments, and they were working on their avatar, and they were designing it for various possible encounters, right? And I was so curious. I said, and I realized, or I asked, I said, so you have to literally think about thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of scenarios. And Ritzy, you just talked about this person, right? Similar kind of experienced in Asia, right? That the languages and the cultural experiences and norms, and tying that to the diversity within Latinidad. And I was like, wow, this would be really helpful to inclusion efforts. Like, how might we imagine the thousands of scenarios that we need to consider in holding a space, any type of space, for not just race, ethnicity, language, but, you know, ability, like culture, like all of that, in creating not just a checklist, but like a really layered tool that we could consider when, you know, building community, or, you know, bringing together community. And then one of those layers, I just thought, you know, about Colony, your experience with this woman, this part of history, and the connection to this part of land. And I know exactly what you're talking about, because I was introduced to what that weaving of that experience of weaving the land into an experience of that kind was through my work with the Intercultural Leadership Institute. It is different. It is sacred. It is profound when you bring people together in work, in culture, in learning, in ceremony with land. And so how, like, that layer, how might you bring that layer through, you know, through technology, through the metaverse, or through scenario building into a space, whether virtual or physical? And I'm just like, wow, like this could...
The possibilities, ladies, this is
like really, this could be really beautiful.
Yeah, this is the work. This is why it's important to have these conversations, because what is possible on the blockchain, it's a wild, wild west, ladies. Anything is possible. What you think of, like, oh, a website and da-da-da-da-da, it is wide open on what is possible, what how you can change things, the impact you can make. I've seen folks build so that people get funds during disasters immediately, and it doesn't go through all these funnels like immediately to community. I am co-hosting another podcast that is more on the policy level of, because we could talk about all this all day, but if government gets involved and the policies don't reflect or don't support, then it's kind of, a moot point on certain things. But I'm excited to be talking to more indigenous, because I did a talk last year about the possibilities of decentralization, the blockchain for indigenous communities, because they can get land rights back that no one can dispute because it's on the blockchain. They can get designs and cultural things. Their language can be archived. Like, this can be for indigenous, marginalized communities globally, where you can be like, no, sorry. Yeah. This is ours. This, like, that type of stuff. It's super exciting. And what I've seen since pre-pandemic is that a lot of the video games, that is the metaverse. So our younger generation's been in it. They've been designing their avatars. They've been in these spaces. So a lot of people, they were allowed to have a flag, a kufi, or anything Palestinian, anything. So what they did was they went into the metaverse and they protested there. It was a beautiful thing to see these young kids coming out and doing walkouts in the metaverse and having their flags. And you know what I'm saying? Like, this is powerful stuff. Communication, and where they're like trying to stop people from being in community, because they know how powerful that is when we get together and exchange ideas and information. So they can get on the metaverse. They can get in these different metaverses and be like, da-da-da-da-da. Also in code if needed. Like, so it's like that is also the work that me and the people that I am close to are interested in. Yeah. What is the intersection of this technology, but also the real world, the nature, because Colony, being on land, all of us being together in community, on land, in person. We talked about it at the last retreat in a couple, I think it was February. There's a frequency that happens when you're together in community on the land, specific land. It was like, you couldn't recreate that. It was like a moment in time, though. When we did, it was a full moon. We were in the mountains. We have this picture of, which could be definitely explained via science, but we had never seen it, where it was the moon and the clouds went around it in a circle. Yeah. I was like, is it the shrooms that I'm on, or is this real? So I had to ask somebody, like, you're not on it. Is this real? They're like, no, that's real. We took a picture and I was like, how do we mesh those two things? How do we utilize this new technology to help with climate change, to take care of the earth, to take care of our people? That's the intersection that I'm at, and that's what we're trying to figure out. But I love this connecting the dots of all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what can comfort, folks that are like, it's going to take over. It's not going to take over things like those real lived experiences of, like, like you just explained, Ritzy. It can never recreate the history, the blood spilled into, on land, like that memory that land holds, and that you experience standing on it, putting your bare feet onto it, walking into the ocean. Like, it can never recreate that. But it holds possibilities for things that we can't seem to solve for currently, or even imagine. Just like
ownership, preservation.
Yeah, and you were speaking, Ritzy, about indigenous rights, and we know we can, as citizens of this country called the United States of America. We hold certain rights under, policies, but what about our friends and family members who exist under sovereign tribal nations? Policies don't mean anything to them.
Exactly.
Treaty agreements in some cases don't mean anything to them. So how do they, this is as you mentioned, this is where sovereignty can be can be taken back and or reinstated. The power can be taken back. So there's real solutions here that don't exist.
I agree. All the more reason to have these conversations specifically about emerging technology in a way that you're moving the dialogue beyond fear.
Beyond fear.
And it's an opportunity for artists. I always say that artists are world makers, and this is just another way for them to express the world that they want to see and live in. And particularly for young folks who feel like they aren't empowered right now, and they don't they can't express themselves in the structures that we've designed and that we've maintained for centuries. This is a way for them to embrace the worlds that they want to see. And I love the example that you made, Ritzy, about, the protests taking place in the metaverse. So it's like, how do we just bridge that kind of world making that could take place in one space to what we have here?
Yeah. And it's
exciting to think about.
Coming from the music industry too, as soon as I jumped into the space, I was like, what's happening in the music, in that creative space. And it's been a beautiful thing because the community is so strong because they're so new right now that it's like all genres of people being hella tight, not performative. They're really in community, showing up, collaborating, having these Twitter things. I will never call it X on its own. It's Twitter for me. And I'm only on it because this is where the community, I still make connections, but slowly but surely we're like in these different spaces. But it's a beautiful thing to see with the visual artists. And, as a creative, you're a creative. So there's a lot of people that do visual art or mixed media art that also create music, and to see that, those collaborations is because, like you're saying, these are like the independents that are not the Beyoncés and the stuff that even they are getting fucked by streaming, right? So now they're in community and they're tight as hell and they're like, we're early. And so another thing that I want to mention is that it's never too late, but also to let you know that it's still really early. So to have these conversations are very important, and to have to people think of, like, I could have conversations with you off air and we could come up and build something on this shit that's going to empower and help so many people, and see how that evolves. Like, that's why I'm in it. That's why I'm preaching. I'm trying to, speak to global, decision makers via the UN and stuff, and in these global platforms, because there's the white people that are in there and that are looking at all this technology as the money grab. They could care less about the artists that we are here today talking about their struggles. They could give a fuck, right? So when I have an opportunity, I think all of us across the board, when we have an opportunity to be in these white spaces where they're rarely allow any of us in, that's an opportunity to be like, I don't know if 1 or 10,000 of you motherfuckers are going to listen to me, but this is what's happening. This is what you want to talk about it, be about it. Invest, support, do all these things, right? So before we go into the non-serious nice stuff that we do at the end, like last year we talked about De La Salle and Tio Pedro. What's some advice for what are some things that we could leave any creative of color that's marginalized, that's on the outskirts of any age at this moment in time, about to be summer of 2024, what are some things they should keep in mind, considered advice, any of that type of stuff?
Find a way to be in service of others. Take yourself out, try to take yourself out of your work and find a way to help someone else's. I think that when we do that, ideas come to us, opportunities come to us. It just opens your mind. It also expands someone else's world. So I mean, I think about some of the interesting work that's taking place here, where people are taking advantage of having one platform and then using it to help other people. So I think that for artists, to find a way to be in community and to partner with other people and find a way to help someone else do what they need to do, I think is generative and will open some opportunities for them.
Evonne?
Can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure that all the thoughts that were going through my mind are on point here.
Yeah, just, any final thoughts for the current state of any creative, marginalized creative of any age? Some words of advice, some things to consider as they're in this current fucked upness.
First of all, I want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we did not do you better. I'm sorry that we did not lay a better foundation for you to walk into at this point in your creative journey. I want to, call those elders who have a little bit more to help bring those younger creatives under your wings, because we can't rely on those, multi-million-dollar artists to create, funds that will help younger BIPOC creatives. But I will say this, and it's already happening. Younger creatives are taking care of themselves, each other, through barter systems, through exchange, through GoFundMe, through by any means necessary, through limited options. And I am going to say, in those situations, the innovation and ideas coming out of there are like, get ready. Like, there's some incredible stuff being made and created, and we're not ready for it. But we need to get ready for it. Right. So I would say young creatives, keep doing what you're doing. Elders, do better.
Do better.
Amen.
Right.
And those are my final thoughts on that.
Do better. And you just reminded me of Deborah Padilla. I met her earlier this year. She loves you, Evonne, by the way.
And I love her right back.
And it was the Femme Confab conference in San Diego. It was a second one. And I went to it, and I don't know her personally. I just know of her work, and I heard her speak. And she said something that I've been using non-fucking stop since she said it. And I think this pertains to everything that we've talked about today. She said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I was like, yes. I was like, that's short, succinct, to let you know how important all this work that we're all doing is. Whether you're a creative, you're an ally, you're a supporter, you're a VC, whatever, like, help us not be on the fucking menu. This is why it's important that we have these conversations. This is why it's important that we take care of ourselves, like what we're all trying to do, dig deeper, and focus so that you can be a better ally, a better culture bearer, or all that stuff, because they don't give a fuck about us, guys. Remember that shit.
And that's facts.
So shout out to her.
Deborah was the first person that said in different, not so many words, to me, it really put weight on the responsibility that I had becoming part of self-help graphics and art, the weight of that responsibility, not in a like, I want to, overwhelm you, but right. What I was entering into. And I'll never forget that. And that was the first encounter with Deborah. And number 2 was the lion that she is at a table. Let's talk about being at the table, a table of the power brokers, of arts and culture leaders, right? These are the most powerful. And she said what needed to be said at that table when no one else would say it.
Right.
And I was like, I will be that. From this point forward, I will be Deborah.
Right.
When Deborah is not there at the table, I will be the voice of Deborah. Right. And no greater gift. I love you, Deborah.
Yeah, I love her. And she came up to talk to my friend Candy, who they met working at Spark, because she does the altares and stuff. And I was standing next to her, my friend, and she goes, "Are you Ritzy?" And I was like, I thought I was in trouble. I thought I got in trouble all of a sudden. And I was like, yeah. And then she's like, "Oh, thank you for doing." And I was just like, I was like, you know who I am? And we took pictures, and she was like, "Yeah, and I love Evonne." I was like, "I love Evonne." And we're just loving on you and stuff. And it's just like, to be seen in that way, to hear her was inspiring. To have a conversation with her on a personal level was next level inspiring, to where I'm just like, okay, sometimes I think you guys can, agree, is, you do this inside, undercover, you do this work, and you don't know if people see it.
I just want Deborah to know how many people see her. First of all, she's my chingona, like she is my amorcita. And I want her to know how many people see her, and like, more importantly, like how I see her and how I love her. And I'm getting teared up right now.
I know. I know. We need to take care of those folks like Deborah that are putting themselves on the front fucking lines of this work.
Yeah.
And being unapologetic, like just being like, I'm doing this, and they don't give a fuck the repercussions that they have to endure. We need to protect her. We need to protect folks like
100%. 100%.
The elders, people that came before us, that have set, like, why do some of our institutions that don't get the money have money and know that they're going to be at that property for longer than a year? Because of her.
Yes.
100%. When the white institutions get 50 fucking years?
That's right.
She's fighting for us to have a couple of years, to have these these cultural institutions that people take for granted. Like, oh, we got one. No. Right. Let's keep it.
Right. 100%. And to know, right, that she was part of this legacy. We talked about this during our last time together, Colony, when I think you had written about the Black culturally specific arts organizations, the historic Black culturally specific arts organizations. Deborah's part of that, the Latino culturally specific arts organization, that legacy of organizations that started with nothing, out of nothing, and did beautiful work, right? and the people who got paid little to nothing, no retirement, right? Like all of that, those sacrifices that did what? Contributed to the cultural equity of our field. Like, how do we pay that? How do we pay those people who like still are not, we have not done that kind of payback yet. That's a injustice that has yet to be repaired, right? Like that has yet to be done correct. So she is part of that legacy, and and there are many others, of course, many others. So yes, shout out to Deborah Padilla. We love you.
That's such an important part of this intergenerational dialogue. I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about what we want to see in our future, right?
Yes.
But there is such a huge part of acknowledging and respecting the past. And there's so much that we can take from it and learn from it. So when you're talking about the metaverse, Ritzy, and we foregrounded this whole conversation at the beginning about this sense of retreat that artists are feeling in this moment. There's something to that. The underground, this is just a new iteration of the underground. And how do we take our ancestors who are still our living ancestors, how do we take them with us on this journey? Because we are nothing without them.
Yeah, how do we ensure that we take care of the ones that are still here? How do we ensure that we take care of the ones that are doing the work now? So when they become of a certain age and they are retired or aged out or done, that how massive the impact is of their work, that they're taken care of, right? Us, when we're the next level of stuff, to ensure that we're okay because we're doing all this work, and I've mentioned it many times here. My leadership coach, Wendy Amata, reminded us the work that she does is she's like, we build different as women of color, as communities of color, we build differently because we're not out here like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make a grip of money. Yeah. It's like, no, how do I make the biggest impact? And imagine all the work that Deborah, and actually she sent me somebody, she was like, you should have her on your show. I go, how about you on my show? How about you have a conversation? I want people to know about you and how amazing you are. But she, to have her be okay, to have her be financially okay, because of the amount of work that she's done. Like how can we ensure that? All that stuff. But yeah, I feel like that needs to be a bumper sticker. That needs to be a t-shirt. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, because these motherfuckers are going to eat us alive. They could
Deborah
give a fuck
bringing
about us.
the nuggets, always bringing the nuggets.
Yes. Okay, so I was in New York in April. April 5th is now officially Women in Hip Hop Day. I was there to witness at the Lincoln Center because of the amazing Martha Diaz put it together, and the mayor's office did the proclamation while I was there. It was a moment, ladies, because I know how much you guys love hip hop. Evonne, I know how much we all love New York, but Evonne, you were up in there. You're one of the few West Coast people that love the cold weather when you were out there.
Yes, it did.
So now we're, according to whoever, hip hop is now 51 years old.
Jesus.
Women in hip hop is the same conversation was had there. The little workshops that I was able to attend because I was there for something else is the same shit. Women were doing the work and not getting any fucking recognition for it. And someone said, and then sometimes they were better than the dudes. Hip hop, as women of a certain age bracket, What are we listening to right now? What are we excited about for hip hop? Anything?
I mean, what else is there to listen to but Kendrick? They not like us. They not like us.
To be in LA right now, let me tell you, I wish.
When I say literally every car
bumping it, I'm sure,
is bumping Not Like Us. I am not exaggerating. And I am in East Los. And I am in East Los. Every car is bumping Not Like Us. And I love it because I'm bumping it too. So
that's hilarious.
I just heard on I just heard on somebody's podcast because it was on. I wasn't listening to it. I was watching it, and they were like, "This is really." I think it was like Charlemagne. It was like, "This is really not about Kendrick and Drake. This is really about the West Coast sound comeback."
Yeah,
that's what this really is about.
Summer of the West Coast. Summer West Coast summer for sure. And also, I think it brings us back to the conversation, right? Like it's kind of just been like hip hop has just kind of been like whatever. And what I love about this whole thing, yeah, sure, could we be talking about what the fuck's happening in other parts of the world? Sure. But what I love about this is that people are always like, oh, the older generation of hip hop, they fell off, they're whack, they're Cornsville. Well, when you put it up and it's skills to skills, and there's it was undeniable, the skill level, how prepared he was, how it was like all these levels of things that showed you the true spirit of hip hop, the true meaning of hip hop. Like you gotta come with it. Like sure, you're making a lot of money with your mumble this and da, but what are you saying and what are you doing? So when I was just like the skill level.
I love that because when we think about when I think about hip hop and everyone, not everyone, but the conversation among people our age, right? That hip hop is dead and all of this stuff. I mean, if anything, this moment taught us that it's not. This is pen to pen writing skills versus flow, whatever. And you see what comes out on top. So the conversation isn't about streams. The conversation isn't about who's producing the beat. It comes down to skills of what you're saying. And that's why I think this moment's resonated so much. Right. I mean, it's certainly a reckoning when you think about the industry, but man, I just taking it back to just...
It was exciting, right? To witness and to be on the West Coast and to be up on Twitter when it was released and to see the reaction. And people are like, oh, when people in New York wake up, on the East Coast wake up to this shit. And it's just like the level of all the things. But also what it made me miss is, I don't know if you guys knew, I was an intern at the world famous Wake Up Show. So I missed those ciphers where you could not.
Oh, yeah.
You had to come off the dome. There would be, if you were coming off written, you could tell that it was coming off. It was pre-written. And you would be like out. Like this was like skill against skill on that level, like that excitement, like, oh shit, he said this and he brought this. And it was just like, like bring that shit back. Like the real cipher, like bring those battles back. And I know everything's cyclical, right? So this is so interesting, this moment in time, like what's going to happen. And then it's an election year, folks. The creatives, the artists, they're the ones that come with it. And we haven't had that, I think, in hip hop, where there were artists of any age come out and talk about what the fuck is happening culturally. And is this the time? Is this the time? Depending either way, because it sucks. The people that are either whoever wins is going to be fucked up. Right. So I'm I'm not excited for the fallout and what happens, and what, especially because the people that are going to get impacted are our people. But what is that art that comes out of that? You know, because I don't. Do you think that anyone from the United States in hip hop has spoken about the genocide and the da 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 and the blah blah blah? I don't see that.
I
What,
see some heads
Macklemore?
shaking right now.
I gotta give
Why
props
did
to
it have to
fucking
take
Macklemore.
Macklemore? Why did it have to take Macklemore to say something for us to be having this conversation right now?
But people, I mean, I think we've been seeing we know why it took Macklemore, because he's white, because artists have been talking about Palestine, but nobody was paying attention.
Right.
And I mean, that's an old story. And does it mean that Macklemore's song isn't important and good and contributes to the conversation and the creative the creative, very necessary content that we need right now? No, but we also know, why. And he should be doing it, right? He should be doing that.
Should have been.
But let's not pretend that others haven't been, since way back to up till now, right? Haven't been suppressed, haven't been censored, etc. Listen, the main media, the mainstream media isn't covering the election. It's an election year. Every other election year, it would have been covering it since January, if not before. That's weird. So I don't know. I don't know how elections or the U.S. is going to be covered in hip hop, or whether it is or whether it's not. I think the general state of our general state of affairs, it's going to be hard to find that anywhere. And what we hear hip hop wise, that'll be a needle in a haystack, because that's what, that's the commercial. That's kind of how hip hop is positioned now. And then we get little slivers or little nuggets, not like us, right? Or these rarities. So I don't know. We'll see.
Right. I mean, it would be nice if Kendrick is on it right now, right? If he were to say something, maybe not a whole song, maybe a post, maybe some, when all eyes are on, we don't have that many folks of color that are at that level, if that makes sense. And they have this amazing platform, and
I feel he has done his duty tenfold with To Pimp a Butterfly. And if he doesn't do one more thing, he doesn't have, the man won a Pulitzer. He was the moment, right? But I'd be curious to see. I feel like he is in self-admittedly, right, in an introspective moment,
right?
And so I don't know if we'd get that from him. But I wonder what other artists might be poised for that.
Yes, other artists at that level. Sure, there's a lot of artists of color that have been talking about it, like you said, have been shut down, not put forward in these algorithms and stuff. But I don't know. It's just there's a potential to really, I don't know. Anyways, any final
burnt out? I think that I just wonder if it's just a fear of retribution. I think we're in this moment where everyone has an opinion,
right?
But then the repercussions of having that, I think they fear it for some reason. I mean, I don't want to get into a cancel culture moment, but I mean, I think about some of the things that Quest has just said recently.
Oh my
about
gosh,
Kendrick. And the brother sentence, like, is like obliterated right now. So I think that there's like this reticence to even say anything because you'll have your moment. Some people are staying in the moment a little too long. But all it is a moment, right? I mean, I just, so why not?
Is she frozen?
Push the envelope and say something. So I don't know. We're in a really, brace yourself because it's about to get wild.
I've just been playing, in addition to Kendrick Lamar, I've been playing "We Gonna Make It" over and over by Jadakiss, over and over and over, like as my motivation song. We gonna make it. We gonna make it. So like I take my motivation where I get it. I know it's a throwback, but it's effective.
It's effective and it still works. It still works. We can listen to all those throwbacks and they still work. Right.
Nice.
All right, ladies, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I'm debating.
My God. Wow.
I'm debating whether I make it into a 2-parter or give it all to them. But thank you so much for taking the time. And this is around the time that we came out last year. So if you guys are down, I would love to do it again next year. I feel like you guys are so important. The work that you're doing, I just want to thank you for, not giving up, for doing what you need to do to take care of yourself so that you're still out there on the front lines and doing this important work. I appreciate you. I appreciate you on a personal level. We don't do it daily, but we do it frequently. And when we do it, it's with purpose of whatever it is that we're talking about, on our threads. So thank you so much for that. I will have links in the show notes to all the stuff for you both. Please support them. Please support them as individuals, their work, who they're amplifying, and what we're talking about. This is the time because we need this. We need our roots, and we need our roots to flourish and thrive. And it's the important work that folks like Evonne and Colony are doing that makes that possible. So thank you so much, ladies, and catch you on the flip side.
Appreciate you both. Appreciate you, Ritzy. It's good to see you, Connie. Love you both. Love that we always weave together.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. There you have it, folks. Colony Little and Evonne Gallardo. Gems, just gems, a wealth of knowledge especially when we talk about these subjects. So I love having them on. It's always good times, very insightful. At the time of this recording, we're in June. I mean, it's an election year. I mean, so many things can change in a couple of months, let alone a year. So please expect, hopefully, if they're down, we'll continue to have these combos because I love getting the updates and I love seeing them as well because they're fantastic humans, if you will. So we're going to have a couple of episodes and then we're going to take a break. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm going to be re-releasing classic episodes because we got them since 2020, kids. And you need to know these people because we're all about amplifying diverse voices. So we're going to be re-releasing some because we keep continuously get new, listeners. And now we have it on YouTube. So unfortunately, most of those are only going to be audio only, but still you get to hear some amazing voices out there that are creating, building, helping communities on a global scale, on a local scale, and so much more. So muchísimas gracias for all the support. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you spreading the word. I love getting all the feedback, the DMs, the texts. from people that I know is great, but when I get them from people that I don't know, that discovered because someone told them about it, or they saw the reel and they're like, oh, I love this, I want to listen to this, then I'm all about it. Thank you so much, because this is a lot of work, very independent. It takes a lot of time to produce, to book, to edit, to do all the things. So I really, really appreciate you for being on this ride, on this journey with me. You know what I'm saying? So as always, you know the ways to support. Tell your folks, tell your peeps, tell your friends. You can leave reviews. That's how we get it up, so that other people that you may or may not know get to see this. Join and subscribe YouTube, because that's a big engine that really helps with podcast discovery. And, you know, we're going to be coming out with Emerging Tech Journeys to amplify diverse voices in emerging tech that I've, talked about at length here. I'm just coming off of 2 amazing conferences, both in Texas, one in Austin. It was Consensus. It's more of emerging tech centric. And then the following week was the Hustle and Socialize event that we had this year. Cristina Olivares, the founder of that. And that was very, very special, because I was in a town that I hadn't been in since I was little. I was speaking to Black and brown women entrepreneurs just starting their journey, or have just maybe 1 or 2 years into their journey. And I got to expose them and tell them the realities of what's happening right now that they think they may not need to know about, what's happening in emerging tech. And the feedback that I have received so far has been tremendous, and makes my flights getting canceled and all that stuff worth it. And inspiring folks to move into tech, worth it. And just having people think about it and be safe when using it, what's available currently to the masses, to find out how it's being utilized by folks that look like us, other marginalized communities, and how they're using it for social good. I mean, that's the special intersectionality of it all. So yeah, super exciting stuff. I'm also a co-host of the Get Down, where we talk about policy, market trends, and the latest when it comes to the impact for Black, brown, and Indigenous folks. So that launched a couple of weeks ago. Those are up, available on all your favorite platforms and on YouTube's. So yeah, thanks again. I'm excited for this next batch of guests that I'm already recording with and getting them ready from when we get back from our little respite for the summer that we have every year. But the information and the diverse stories are always going to be coming, so look for those. Let me know, reach out, DM, email, all those different things. Let me know how we're doing. Let us know who you want more of, or recommend folks, or let us know what we're doing and what we're doing wrong, how we can improve, because this definitely needs to evolve all the time. So all right then, as always, we reap. Word to Your Mama is owned and produced by Ritzy P. Intro beat produced by Nico Beats. For partnership inquiries and contact info, check out wordtoyourmama.com. And as always, Word to Your Mama is brought to you by ritzyperiwinkle.com. And now, introducing
the Supernatural Bear Corner.
Supernatural Bear. Burp.